I guess the easiest way to begin is to start from the beginning.
When I was about 4 years old, my mom took my little brother Tiger and I to a playground park in Lampasas, Texas. And we were there with some other kids. We were hanging out, playing around and having a good time. And my mom comes up to me. She said, I'm gonna go across the street to a Winn-Dixie and get some groceries for a picnic. And she wanted Tiger and I to stay at the park. So Tiger and I stayed and she left and she went across the street. We continued to play with the kids, and as the day went on, it started to get dark. The other kids left, but my mom never came back.
The immense amount of work that goes behind the science of learning and the science of teaching is what ultimately ignites these opportunities for students to progress professionally and educationally. As a student, AVID wasn't the thing that fixed us. It was the people who were doing AVID that gave us this opportunity to really take hold of a future that wasn't necessarily an option for a lot of us.
Now, growing up in foster care for Tiger and I was very difficult. We were forced to move into these homes with people who looked nothing like us, who talked nothing like us, who didn't eat the same foods we ate, who didn't watch the same shows that we watched, and we were expected to call them mom and dad. This duo got so bad that they had to split us up. And it sounds so cliche to think that two brothers grow up in the same place and wind up in two completely different ends, but that's exactly what happened. My whole life, I didn't want to be recognized. I didn't want to be noticed. I just wanted to be a regular kid with regular kid problems. But for some reason, Jonathan Grant kept getting recognized for the wrong things.
I think as a kid, I wasn't really able to see past today. Like this place called college, it didn't seem so far away, it just didn't seem realistic. Everyone always told me I had potential, which I hated as a little kid. I hated that idea of, oh, you have so much potential, because that meant expectations, and that meant people wanted things for you that you knew you couldn't have because your life wasn't the same, or my life wasn't the same as everyone else's. I never would have guessed I'd end up where I am today.
I was the kid that sit in the back of the class and the teacher would say, Jonathan, please shut your mouth. You're disrupting my class. I would have got up out my seat, tossed it back. Miss, I don't even know why you talking to me like that. You got all those other kids over there laughing and talking and cutting up, and you gonna pick me out of the whole group and put me on blast. And then I would have walked out of the classroom, I'd have slammed the door behind me, then I'd have peeked through the little window, make sure everybody saw me. And then I would have walked really slowly to the principal's office saying, please let somebody run into me. Because that was the mentality that I had.
I tended to be the kid who got in a lot of trouble, but a lot of people loved. Like, a lot of teachers really stuck their neck out for me. A lot of coaches tried real hard with me to give me, a lot of principals gave me a ton of second chances. It was like putting on a mask, but that mask was very comfortable. That person who I was that I portrayed to everybody was a version of me. It was just a version of me that I liked. And it was the version of me that I was gonna let people see. I had this rule that you couldn't like me too much, because if you liked me too much, I would start to like you. And then I would mess up something, and then I would get moved, and I would never see those people again. So it was this fine balance of wearing this mask of portraying a positive, happy-go-lucky kid who you better not mess with, because when I get mad, I'm gonna throw down. And really the truth behind it all, which was I was struggling emotionally with the fact that I was a foster kid and I didn't know where I was gonna live. I didn't know where I was gonna get my school books from or my school clothes from. Like, it was just adult thinking that I figured out I could compartmentalize by being two different people, I guess.
When I moved into high school, I was presented with a new problem. That problem was when you turn 18 in foster care, you gotta move out. You're on your own.
Turning 18 meant the end. It meant I no longer had a guaranteed place to live. I no longer had a guaranteed place to eat. So it wasn't important to go beyond 18. It was like, okay, this is the life I got. I'm gonna live it. I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna do what I wanna do. And of course, I had a lot of people trying to interrupt that. Like, I had a lot of people working really, really hard to keep me on a positive track. If it wasn't for particular teachers like David Dybel interrupting my life, and I call it an interruption because I hated it, I didn't want it, I didn't like it, and I ran from it. But they just kept doing it enough until it caught on.
Halfway through my freshman year in high school, I was introduced to the AVID program, and believe it or not, my Algebra 2 teacher nominated me for it. He was one of those math teachers that thought he was way too cool. He came into the classroom the first day of school and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Dybel." I want y'all to call me D squared. Oh man. Yo, Mr. D squared, I got you. That's my boy. And he came up to me one day and he said, Mr. Brown, I have this application for this program called AVID. I think you'd be a very good candidate. It's about getting kids into college. And by this time in life, I got pretty good at telling people what they wanted to hear. So I told Mr. D squared, yeah, I got you. And what I figured I would do is not go and then come back the next day and tell Mr. D squared, man, you set me up. They don't want somebody like me. How you gonna do me like that, Mr. D squared? And so as I left the classroom, I crumpled up the application and I threw it away. Well, the next day, Mr. D squared had that crumpled up application taped to my locker with a little sticky note that said, you will go to this interview, D squared.
So I went into the interview and Paige Tallman, my AVID teacher, and Linda Good were there. They were interviewing me. And I was telling them everything that I thought they wanted to hear. And then the conversation kind of got a little serious. You see, I never told anyone outside of the system that I was a foster child because I was ashamed. But I slipped up this one time. Miss Good asked me, she said, Jonathan, what do you want to do with your future? I said, Miss Good, I don't have a future. I said, when I turn 18, I don't even have a home. So how can I possibly have a future? And I expected her to feel sorry for me because that's usually the response that you get when you tell someone something like that. Oh, poor kid, whatever you need, I'll take care of it for you. But I didn't want her to feel sorry for me. And she didn't. She said, you know what, Jonathan, there's gonna be a lot of things in life that you go through, I go through, they go through, we all go through. And she said, but you know what? It's those things that you go through that are gonna make the brighter future for you. Because you know, once you put your mind to something, you had to work to get it. It's valuable to you in the end. And she said, Jonathan, those are the types of people that we want in AVID. And then she said, Jonathan, we want you in AVID. And I believed her.
You know, if anyone asked in 8th grade who was your favorite teacher, she was probably one of the teachers' names that came up. When I met her officially was in 9th grade, so when I was a freshman in high school. And I learned very quickly she was not the person to try to run game on. Like, she was not the teacher that was gonna put up with any BS, but she was also gonna be the teacher who was always in the room when you needed her. She was gonna be the teacher who was always in the right place with, you know, open arms and open ears to hear about what's going on and help you kind of create a pathway. So the AVID classroom kind of became like this, it's weird to say home, but like it became home base for a lot of us, where we knew we had a set of friends. We knew we had a place where we could kind of escape for a little bit of the hustle and bustle of high school. It was kind of that magnetic place where we all came together and it felt safe. If that's not too cliche to say, I think it felt like a place where we really could be our authentic selves. And that allowed us to kind of find a love for the type of work and the type of learning that we were doing in the AVID class. So Ms. Tallman reached out to my foster parents and convinced them to let me go to this event that was gonna be an overnight event. And now my foster parents were very strict and never ever had an opportunity to like go to a friend's house or spend the night and things like that because they knew that was not something they could let me do. But my AVID teacher convinced them that this was okay. And so the first chance I got, I had been working really hard. I've been doing everything that I was supposed to do as a good student. And I figured, you know, I'm gonna take this night and I'm gonna go have some fun with my friends. And so when we get there, my dad drops me off. I tell him I'm gonna go check in with Miss Tallman. He leaves and I jump in the backseat of my boy's Cadillac and we're gonna go have fun. Like senior year, I've been working hard, we're gonna go have fun. And here comes Miss Tallman. And I could hear her coming, so I'm trying to, you know, duck down in the backseat of the Cadillac and hide because I'm like, man, she's about to ruin my night. This is the one night I get to go have fun and Miss Tallman's gonna ruin it. She gets to the Cadillac and I'm trying to hide underneath my Letterman. And she calls me out. She's like, I can see your big self back there, get out. And so she literally pulled me out of that car and we had an amazing night. I met some phenomenal people who overcame some ridiculously hard barriers in life. But the end of that night kind of ended funky because my friends weren't gonna go party. They were gonna go hit a lick, which is go rob a drug dealer. And Miss Tallman literally, physically removed me off the path that I was on and kept me on a path to success. Because if she wouldn't have removed me from that car, who's to know what would have happened that night, what would have popped off that night, and how I would have ended up, even after all of the hard work, how I would have ended up. So for me, Miss Tallman as an AVID teacher really is that unwaveringly persistent voice and a lot of times physical action that keeps you on the right track until you become mature enough to take ownership of that yourself.
Now, it wasn't an easy thing. It wasn't like an overnight change. I didn't go from this kid who used to run the streets and cut up in class and join these little cliques to this perfect honor roll student who wore a suit and tie to school every day. But best believe by the end of it, I was on the honor roll. And today I am wearing a suit and tie.
I was blessed with the opportunity to start my career really, really young. At 22, I was teaching in college. At 24, I was working full-time with AVID. I got to travel around the United States doing professional development training and strategic planning with colleges and universities all over the country. Professors looking at me like, boy, how old are you? How could you possibly be able to do this? Now 10 years deep, it's a really cool feeling to be that kid who no one wanted into their classroom to the adult that people are trying to pull into their classroom so that they can learn how to reach their students. You put your passion together with something that's impactful in an organization that brings talented people together. Like, it's really hard to show up to work and be mad.
But you see, it's frustrating to think that two brothers can grow up in the same place and have the same thing happen to them, but wind up in two completely different directions. When I was about 9 years old, I was sitting in an ISP, which is an assessment of the foster child in a new home. And my caseworker came in with this letter from this lady named Marcia Grant. I got kind of excited because I knew it was from my mom. You see, she had missed a few visits that we were supposed to have, and I figured, well, at least she wrote me a letter. And one of the most valuable things in foster care that you could have, other than a picture, is a letter from a family member. My caseworker proceeded to sit me down and read the letter, and in the letter it said, I feel that Jonathan's life would be better lived and better afforded in foster care. And I didn't understand what that meant. And so my caseworker explained to me, that is your mother relinquishing her rights. She is no longer your mom.
So when I first did my AVID speech, my biggest fear was that everybody was gonna turn on me and say he's a liar. But everybody cried and everybody clapped and everybody hugged me. And then I was able to take ownership of my life. Like that was my story. And I could use that story to help me heal. Every time I got on stage after that, it was like the best therapy session, right?
If someone would have told 5-year-old Jonathan Grant to imagine what the future would bring, he would have never imagined that he would grow up to be the Jonathan Brown that you all see today.
It is our obligation, our duty, to no longer allow our brothers and sisters to slip through the cracks. But because you defended me, you made a difference. Mary Catherine, because of the decisions that you have made in creating this organization and providing the opportunity to everyone that you have, I would like to give this pin to you.
I was able to heal, I was able to grow. And then I started to see little kids come up to me and say, hey, you know, that's me too. I'm a foster kid too. And I'm going through the same thing. And that, when you're in the moment, you feel like you're the only one struggling, you're the only one battling. But when I became this speaker, I was able to tell other kids' stories as I was telling mine. In part of telling my story to students, I talk about this moment where I'm coming home from college on a long weekend when I stopped in Lampasas, which was my hometown before I got into foster care, to get gas. And as I get out of my car, I see this lady on the other side of the pump who looks really familiar. It was my biological mom. I didn't know what to say to her, I didn't know what to do, so I figured I would let her see me and see if she said anything. So I walk by and we make eye contact and she turns and kind of fiddles with the pump. So I go inside and I'm trying to build up the courage to say something to her, right? And I figure out that what I'm gonna say is, hi, I'm Jonathan, do you remember me? She just turns her head, jumps in her car and drives away. And at the end of it all, I talk about how we have to be open to the idea that educators are gonna try to interrupt our lives. I like seeing teachers say, I am that interrupter. I never had the words to call it. I never had the way to put it together, but that's what I do for kids. I interrupt them. They don't like it sometimes, but I'm doing it so they can get to a better end. I've taken to heart the idea of being an interrupter in almost every aspect of my life. One of my students sent me the video of me when I was 18 years old speaking at AVID Summer Institute in Austin. And I said something like,
No longer will I be pushed around from home to home, left without a purpose or left without a voice. The voice you hear now is the voice of Jonathan Grant Brown, a college-bound student built with the skills and knowledge and the drive for success. Thank you.
It was almost sad to say a necessary origin story. Like, we needed to get dropped off in that park in order to be the men we are today. But as a kid, moms aren't supposed to leave you. They're not supposed to relinquish their rights. They're supposed to love you. They're supposed to celebrate you. They're supposed to get onto you when you do bad and laugh at you when you make stupid jokes. But I think it was necessary. That park was necessary so that I could be here today and be doing what I am doing today. Because without that story, I wouldn't be Jonathan Grant Brown.